Well, let me say good afternoon to all of you, one and all. We are again thankful to God for those that'll be getting on. Um, we know it's Sunday afternoon. We know this is after we get done eating, we want to roll over somewhere and pass out and go to sleep. But this is an important time and a very important moment in history, in our history. And I have two other overwhelmingly qualified gentlemen that are going to be with me. And we're going to have a very open and honest conversation concerning this so that we can move forward and move an agenda forward that is beneficial to our people. So here's what I need you to do for me. I see you as you are coming on. Hey, Valerie, how are you? I need y'all to share. I need you to share. Terry, bless you for being with us this afternoon. I need you to share with as many people as you possibly can. I know there were a few folk that let me know and let it be known on Facebook. I see y'all. Okay, good. Linda, Denise, D. All right. And please share. Please share. Cynthia, Sister Thomas, how are you? So that we can move forward. I don't want to stay on here long, but I want to stay on long enough. And that way we'll be able to. Carletta, good evening to you. Sharon, how are you? Juanita, good evening. Thank y'all so much. Thank you, Valerie. Please, please, please share. Please, I'm asking you to please share so that we can. Hey, Debbie, how you feeling? We can get this out to as many people as we possibly can. Titus, my friend, bless you, man. Thank you for being on here with us. Trina, good to have you with us. Minister Marcia, please share if you would. If you don't mind, please share. Hit that share button, okay? And if you're on YouTube, whatever you got to do to do that, let it be known. Okay, thank you. Hey, Katrina, how are you? How are you? And so, without further delay, I'm going to bring them on. That way we can go ahead and get started. But please, ma'am, please, sir. Please, ma'am, please, sir. Please, ma'am, please, sir. Share, share, share. Hit that share button so that we can have this conversation. Stephanie, bless you for being here with us on today. The first person that I'm going to bring on board is the chieftain of Warren, Ohio. Marcus, how you doing in the person of Pastor Todd Johnson? Thank you so much for being here with us. Gaither, I see you as you're coming on. And then the next person that I'm bringing on board is the Pope of the South Side of Youngstown. He is a fighter and a leader for civil rights, not just in the city of Youngstown, but the state of Ohio as well. Hey, Kim, how are you? Barbara, make sure everybody shares. That's overwhelmingly important, okay? If you could do that for me. And so what I want to do is just kind of go in that order. Pastor Si. Oh, he's okay. He muted. Pastor Todd Johnson, would you just kind of give us a shout out, hello, all that good stuff, and then we'll go from there, okay?
Hey, good afternoon, Pastor Harrison. I pray you're having a great day. To everyone out there on Facebook and YouTube, we see you coming in. God bless you. I'm excited about this conversation, and I echo President Harrison's words. Please share, tag somebody unfamiliar, someone we don't normally see on, grab some young adults, some first-time voters, grab somebody you've argued with in the barbershop. This is the conversation where we want to hear every side. And perhaps while we're sharing, and I know Pastor Harrison shares this sentiment, we might learn some things from others, even when it feels like we don't agree. I think that every opinion matters, especially in such important times as these. I'm open-minded and open ears. So thank you so much, Pastor Harrison, for spearheading this conversation. It is essential that we have this conversation in 10 days. 10 days, we're coming up on voting registration deadline. So we need to get this message out.
Thank you, Pastor Todd. I appreciate that. I see all of you that are coming on. Thank you, Rhonda Darrell. Pastor Simon is on here. You can unmute and give us a quick shout out, and then we're going to dive in to the conversation.
Thank you, Pastor Harrison. Appreciate you putting on this forum so that we can discuss a matter that's critical to our people, and particularly in this day and age, we stand to lose a whole lot in this election if we don't get our people out and vote. It's critical. Um, we have legislators in our state that are trying to pass laws that have detrimental effect on our people in our community. We see the debacle with the redistricting after the voters declared in 2015 and 2018 that we want fair districts to be drawn. And our Ohio Redistricting Commission ignored that and then solely just ignored the Supreme Court's order to create fair districts. That's why we had to have the special election. So it's a really challenging time. And this election, if we don't get out and vote, we stand to lose a whole lot more than we've already lost.
I hear you. And that's what I titled it, Why These Elections Will Make or Break Us. Think about this for just a moment. Think about all of the legislation that's being introduced, the voter suppression legislation that's being introduced and passed due to the fact that a certain party, of which I'm not going to name, is in the minority. And so what I want us to talk about, because sometimes we may be really not apathetic. We just, what's the word I'm looking for? When it's not a major election, we sit at home, we say, oh, it'll be all right, everything will be just fine. But what we fail to understand is that these processes that are in place right now didn't just get in place, but these are things that have been orchestrated by people behind the scenes. And so whichever one of you that would like to go first, I want you to talk about this voter fraud lie that's out here that's really permeating a certain segment of the community.
Pastor Harrison and Pastor Simon, Pops, good to hear your voice. I would love to tap into this right away. And we need to be very, very clear that the show of force that has come forward from minority voters is what is at the core of these false voter fraud claims. The fact that there are so many more minority voters and voters in places where minorities are the majority who have taken advantage of those legal mechanisms, such as absentee voting and early voting, that is the base of the fear. And I think we have to be honest about it, Pastor Harrison. And there's a word and a phrase that you may be familiar with, maybe some of your users and viewers are, and it's called replacement theory. And it is a deep racist theory that the Caucasian population is being replaced, and with it, Western culture and Western European culture being replaced, and that there needs to be an effort to fight that. And it's starting by doing this. There have been over, I just looked up to be sure I was right, over 400 at last count. And that's the beginning of this year, almost 500 voter suppression bills presented, maybe not passed, but presented since the 2021 legislative session. Joe Biden was elected, January 6th happened, and then the big lie spread to any states where any Republican presence has been. And so we have to be aware that those individuals who want to re-disenfranchise our votes are using every mechanism at their disposal. And it is a racist, not just political, but it is a racist agenda. And we need to be aware of that, what's at the root of it, that we're already fighting to engage our communities in voting, and then these barriers are being unnecessarily put up. There is no substantial voter fraud in any state in the union, in any region, in any county. It has never been found to have any effect on any election in modern history. And so this is something we have to be, as you say, very aware of, that it is a lie. And if you ask, including Ohio Secretary of State, they will talk about how secure their voting mechanisms are, and on the same token, leave the door open with fear about fraud that does not exist, simply to justify passing laws that will reduce early voting, that will reduce absentee voting, take away souls to the polls. They've already taken away the Monday before, saying that it's a matter of convenience and things were being rushed. This is suppression, plain and simple. And that's something we have to keep at the front of mind.
Pastor Simon, you want to join in?
Absolutely. Pastor Johnson has touched on those major points, and that's true. It is because the African American vote has been powerful in determining elections. And that's what we are facing now, because the target of this voter suppression is us and trying to suppress our vote. That, again, is what the redistricting is all about. Youngstown or Mahoney County and Trumbull County are in one district together, and now they've separated that, where we are now in part down with Carroll County to dilute the strength of the African American vote and to dilute the strength of the African American vote in Trumbull County. So these tactics are being used, and voter fraud is allegedly being the reason behind it, but we know that's not true. Pastor Todd made that very clear in his comments. It's an outright attack against our vote, and so there's also an effort by a certain party to recruit poll workers to intimidate voters in this election, particularly voters in urban centers where the African American vote has made a difference, especially in our swing states. They're recruiting poll workers to intimidate and restrict people from voting. And that's why we're having the forum on tomorrow, this voter protection forum, to educate our people on what we need to do to combat the tactics that they're going to employ to suppress and hinder our vote.
The amazing thing, too, I don't know if either one of you were aware of that, but in Cleveland, they had shut down all the early voting places, and there was only one for the entire city, which meant for those who had to depend on buses or whatever for transportation, they weren't able to do so. Now, I'm getting ready to go into something as well that I think needs to be discussed. And we've heard this phrase, white Christian nationalism, that's going on right now. And if you understand the history of this nation, and please share, for those of you that have come on, please share, please be so kind to share. You have to remember that in the earlier times of this nation, the only persons who were permitted to vote were white male landowners. White females and people of color had no opportunities whatsoever to vote in any way, shape, form, or fashion. There is this theory that true Christianity is white. And I saw on one news network where they said anybody who is not white is not Christian. Now, with that being said, it also feeds the racistic narrative that is one of the catalysts for a lot of what we see, is that since we're not Christians and since we're in a Christian nation, the only people who should vote should be white Christians. Now, I said all of that so that I could really mess up these two gentlemen who are on here to be able to deal with that, because not only is that having an effect on our voting, it's also having an effect on the African American church. And there's more that I want to say about it, but I'm not going to, because this is not the time to do it. But there is, and if you notice this, and I know I'm gonna get in trouble for the little bit that I say, there is this movement that pulls African Americans out of their churches into evangelical churches. And then when they get there, they're voting freedoms are challenged. Now, any of the two of you want to jump in on that one?
I'll let the younger go right ahead, and I'll clean up.
Well, to that point, and thank you, Pop. To that point, that is a reality that has existed for some decades and has been accelerated in recent years. Under banners of unity and kingdom and all of these things, many of our active African American Christians, and by the way, a lot of evangelistic efforts have been made in urban communities to turn the tide and indoctrinate and feed on. Let's be clear here: Black voters do tend to be quite conservative about certain social issues because of our Christianity and our traditional Christian views, right, wrong, or indifferent. And sometimes it is overkill. And I do believe that evangelicals and their conservative political counterparts or partners, I should say, have seized on that to hammer home certain issues, to spread fear in our communities among Christians. And as you said, Pastor Harrison, convince some of our devout Christians that our churches aren't Christian enough because we don't stand or we don't pillory certain people, let's say in our LGBTQ communities, as much as they would like to see us do. Lord knows the church does it enough, by the way. It's done more than enough. And also with the issues of abortion and family values, using that as a stick to pull Black voters away from their base and to pull them away from seeing the concerns that are hurting them economically and systematically, and almost victim blaming in many times, engaging in, and I'm glad Leah is on here, respectability politics. If you would only live like this or do like this, your life would be better, when we know that there are systematic things that you could be the greatest person ever. At the end of the day, your skin is still black when you get pulled over, and when you're going to get that loan, and when you're getting your house appraised, and when you're being treated at the doctor's office. That never changes. But they've treated us, and they have successfully pulled people away. And there are people near and dear to my heart who have abandoned the reality that your blackness is still seen as a weapon and that you are still seen as inferior because they've been so accepted by other populations. And the idea of Christian nationalism has completely conflated Christianity with country in ways that we were never intended to be as believers, but has become a rallying cry that actually outweighs actual real patriotism. And it is leaning into a religion of its own. It's a national religion at this point. It is not even a Jesus-based religion. The flag and the army and guns mean more to these individuals than God himself. And real believers with discernment should have seen this from a mile away.
Thank you.
Pastor Simon?
Yes. We live in two different worlds as it relates to the African American experience and our counterparts. And so there sometimes, in the name of Christianity, they sometimes try to pull us into their world to make us insensitive to our own experience, claiming that their world is right. Their views on political issues and stances are correct, and we need to join them in their stands. I don't question a person's Christianity, but the way sometimes our counterparts support candidates and policies that negatively impact our communities, that's an area where I believe that there's just some insensitivity and not being able to identify with the African American experience. And sometimes even our own buy into that. And, until they have some need themselves where that community can't help them, then they come back to the black church to get their issues resolved, or to get their pastors to fight for their their children, their families. And so we've got to be a little smarter than that, and make people respect who we are and our experience, rather than to cater to their beliefs and not stand for our own people and our own rights.
I have a question that's in here. It says, why isn't there any campaign literature posted around the city for Democrats that are running, because they see a lot of it from other candidates posted. And I know Community Mob does a lot of that work. Is there something that we could do? And we also have the political forums. Community Mob has theirs, and ours is coming up sometime this month. Is there anything else that we could possibly do to bring about the information? And we have to be careful about that, Debbie, because if you provide one, you have to provide the other, because you have to be in a nonpartisan tone. But is there a website? Is there a Facebook page? Is there something that people can go to, that we can point them to, that will enable them to understand who the Democratic people are that are running? And we also, in fairness, have to also list the other ones as well.
Let me just chime in on that one. Of course, the Community Mobilization Coalition is nonpartisan. Therefore, we do not endorse per se. We do have an organization within our community, the Youngstown Warren Black Caucus, that does endorse. And so not only do we endorse, but we screen candidates from both parties, all parties that are running for particular offices. And then we make recommendations to the body, the Black Caucus, of who is supporting our interests, whether they be Democrat, Independent, or even Republican. But so that is going to be coming out very soon. As a matter of fact, tomorrow we'll be making our endorsements and getting out our literature for those candidates who we believe are supporting our interests. And so we do have a vehicle to do that. The Black Caucus is a PAC, Political Action Committee, so they're allowed to endorse. And what we need to do as the African American community, support our organizations when we do put out our literature on the candidates who are going to represent our interests and our values.
Pastor Todd, you wanted to chime in?
You know, I'd love to add to that. And thank you to those entities that take the time to vet, to interview, to offer platform, as we saw the Community Mobilization Committee last week, and we'll see it again. But this last week, they attempted to offer to candidates to speak their views, and they did not. Some of them chose not to. We know that things are along partisan lines, no matter how much we try to avoid it. But that is a reality. But I do want to say that to all of you who are watching, as you hear and see, if you hear and see, and if you would be intentional about following these pages on Facebook, especially the Community Mobilization Committee, the Youngstown Warren Black Caucus. I am a part of some of those efforts. And in Trumbull County, we have some organizations. We as a people need to focus ourselves on highlighting and sharing diligently the information that is out there. That is something that I do see from, quote unquote, the other side, is they are consistent and committed to messaging out their values and their votes over and over and over again. Whereas too frequently in the African American community, especially, we use these tools such as social media for everything but the things that empower our people. And we almost algorithm ourselves out of knowing what's going on. And for those of you that don't know what that big word means, it means that there are patterns to what we see on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and Instagram based off what we search for and engage with. And because we only sporadically engage with voting and issues here and there, but we consistently engage with foolishness and arguments and dumb debates about what color a picture is or whether this celebrity should have broke up with that celebrity and all these other distractions, that is what gets fed back to us over and over and over again. So frankly, the Youngstown War and Black Caucus page, the community mobilization page, Pastor Harrison's videos get swallowed up in your feed because your feed is tuned to so much foolishness. You have to be intentional about sharing the information that is made available. If that means you have to search it out, then you just have to search it out and then share it with others. Make your own poster, get your own printer, go to Kinko's, ask somebody to give you flyers or brochures. We have to be more intentional. And I think that ever since, and I'll say this and shut up, ever since we got to the end of the 2008 campaign, McCain lost, and Palin, Sarah Palin's cry was to the real America. And even she went rogue. And that started an entire trend that was already ugly with President Obama's campaign. The Don't Tread on Me, the Tea Party, the birtherism. There has been an incredible movement and a consistent movement to push the same ideas and ideations over and over again. And unfortunately, we have been inconsistent. And one of your commenters just said that people don't come to talk to them unless they want signatures or this. And they're not wrong. They're not wrong. We're not coming back around on a consistent basis. Fox News don't shut up. They don't shut up. The Don't Tread on Me people still got their flags out there with snakes on them. And the birth, they have not been quiet during, after, before, in between these elections. We unfortunately are terribly unfocused. So we have to share this information and be diligent. Push it in our churches.
And let me add, because, you know, we've been having these forums of Community Mobilization Coalition for 20-some years, over 20 years, where we've invited Republican, Democrats, Independents, Green Party, whoever's running to participate. And for 20-some years, they have showed up and participated. They've come to our community. They've come to the forums at Union Baptist. This is the first year, and this is why this is critical. And I'm saying it because it needs to be heard, and we need to respond to it. This is the first year that the Republican candidates have totally ignored the African American community and our forums, as if to say, we don't need to appear before you. We don't have to answer your questions. We don't need your vote. It's a total disrespect to the Black community. And in the primary election was the first time they did it. Some of them said they were going to be there, and then at the last minute, all of them backed out. I believe that was something that was directed to them not to participate. We'll get votes for you. All we have to do is just tell them you're a Trump supporter, and we can get some votes for you. We don't need their votes. We have to let people know that they cannot disrespect the Black community, and we got to do that with our vote. For them not to appear is a slap in the face to our community, and we've got to let them know that through our vote.
Excellent. And Ayana, just let me know. I'll get members of the core team to come to your building and get your people registered. That's not a problem. If their schedules won't allow them, just let me know. I'll come and register them so that they can participate in the voting process. Alicia said something, and this is the elephant in the room that we're going to deal with today. We criticize our young people for not voting. We talk about them for not voting. Sometimes we talk down to them for not voting. And I'm just going to try to paint this picture the best way I know how. If you are already in poverty, if you are already despondent, if you already feel that no one cares or no one is concerned, this is where that my vote doesn't count comes from. Some of it, not all of it, but some of it. My question to my two friends and myself as well, is there a process or a procedure or an activity or something that can be created that will cause our young people to be engaged more than just election times, but actually feel a part of the entire process? And I hope I'm trying to word this the appropriate way, because many times if they don't invest in it, they don't do anything with it. And so I've got a few young folk in my church, and sometimes it's like pulling teeth without Novocaine to get them to engage in this process. But and I think I had shared this with Pastor Simon earlier. Um, when we die and the generation behind us doesn't get engaged, what are we going to do? And for the most part, this probably has already, I'll tell this story. One of my members, and I can't give detail to it, told me point blank that they know what we do as a people. They know we're going to get mad. They know we're going to protest. They know we're going to scream and yell.
Yeah.
And they know in about 2 to 3 weeks we're going back home. So they have studied us and they have learned our behavior. So what can we do, gentlemen? What can we do to change this cycle of non-involvement and engage them in such a way that they actually feel a part of the process or change?
Pastor Todd, you want to go?
Yeah, I can tap a little bit into this. Two things I would say. First of all, we need to establish a path to identifying and advocating and accomplishing small wins and gains at the local level where your vote does have more of a direct impact. It is true. The higher up you go, the more your vote is diluted just naturally and nationally because of how that works. And we have to find ways, and this sounds very unpastoral, to in some ways decouple the church's stranglehold on Black civic life that is becoming an outdated model because we live in an increasingly secular society. In the last 15, 20 years or so, that has definitely, especially in the last decade or so, has definitely permeated the Black community in ways that the white community was seeing some 20, 30, 40 years ago. Now, they had an evangelical movement in the religious right that kind of put a stranglehold. And thank you, Leah, for that comment. I was just going to touch on that. We have to form our own civics and our own educational programs and empowerment programs, whether it's in our churches, as a part of our summer camps, VBS. We have to demand whether we're bringing people into our WISE, our Boys and Girls Club community centers, again, in a nonpartisan fashion. But on the other side, and I do want to challenge maybe generationally Pastor Simon a little bit, most people my age, hey, there you are, Pop.
There he is. Bless the Lord.
I'm gonna go ahead and say this. I see you're done eating, so God bless you. You ain't fooling nobody. But let me say this in all seriousness. Most people my age don't care about being disrespected by the Republicans. They care about being disrespected by the Democrats that our parents have voted for 50 years. That's what they care about. And sometimes we feel offended because we feel like we're being dumbed down. We know these segment of folk don't like us and would rather not talk to us and don't want our votes or care about our votes except for when they can pander. The issue is the people we've been loyal to for 40 years. That's the issue. The issue is we don't see. I've seen the memes and they're not incorrect. There was a picture of the same hood, and they said this was the hood under Bush, the hood Bush 1, the hood under Clinton, the hood under Bush 2, the hood under Obama, the hood under Trump. It's the same hood. You can't blame them for being raised generationally under the same circumstances. And so I think this might sound radical, and we can challenge each other on this. Something happened in the Republican side, and it goes back to that Sarah Palin and this what's become this Trumpism now. They disrupted their party. They disrupted their own party and took it over by demanding certain things of their own party and being willing to let their party lose if it meant the party could see how important they were. And something we need to be willing to do is to know that just like younger people, my generation, about 45, 50 and under, are not as married to the church as they were before. They're not married to the Democratic Party as they were before. They may find some amalgamations in between somewhere that we don't understand where they got it from, but it's there. And we need to let them be able to see the power they have no matter which party it supports. And if that means there's some major disruption, here's what that does. That brings people back to the table to actually earn our vote again, because even the Democrats have disinvested from Ohio and are not giving the funding to the traditional union groups and Black voter advocacy groups because they consider this state a lost cause. So we have to start fighting for our people and less for a party. And I know a lot of young adults would agree with me. They don't want to hear about who didn't come to our forum because they know they hate us anyway. But we're talking about the people who use our faces on a regular basis and who have our grandparents basically in their minds, in the young people's minds, brainwashed to blue and are asking, and I know we're saying blue fight for healthcare and blue fight for this and blue fight, you know what I mean? But again, at the ground level, we have not made how these issues work in their favor real to them. And so to me, I'm tired of talking about the Republicans or whomever disrespecting us. I want to talk about holding Democrats accountable and even holding Republicans accountable and letting them know that we are fair game as a community to anybody who is going to meet our agenda, because many Black people were Republicans 60 years ago. And just like the Tea Partiers and the Trumpers turned the Republican Party, if we used our vote, we can turn either one of those parties in a much better fashion towards our concerns. And by the way, we need to be aware that they're not even going after us anymore. They're going after Hispanics nationwide far more than they're going after Black people anyway. So we have to find another way to be more of a linchpin in certain areas in strategic ways.
And the Hispanic community is gravitating to the GOP more than they are. And there was a couple of articles I read and a couple of things that I watched.
Same here.
That said that the GOP is speaking to their issues, so they think, more than the Democratic Party. And so those are things that we have to look at. And then I'm gonna let Pastor Simon jump in there, and he can share with us the bishop's wisdom on how we deal with this.
Yeah, and Pastor Todd is correct. I mean, we can't have any permanent friends or permanent enemies. We just have permanent interests, and that's what we have to create. We have to create a power base within our own community, and we can't just be loyal to a party. We have to be loyal to ourselves and our interests and our people and our causes. Back in 2017, of course, when the Democratic Party they totally disrespected and ignored the Black community here in Youngstown and wouldn't even endorse one Black candidate, as if none of us were qualified. Like there was no Black candidate qualified for mayor, no Black candidate qualified for judge, and no Black candidate qualified for president of council. And so what the Black community did through our organizations, through the Black Caucus, Community Mobilization Coalition, and others, we did our own. You have to create your own. And so we did a grassroots campaign that pulled together and got our people elected. Got Tito Brown elected as mayor. Got Carla Baldwin elected as judge. Jermaine Kitchen elected as president of council, because the Democratic Party disrespected us.
Right.
And so it's not about party loyalty. It's about being loyal to our causes and our people. The issue that you raised with the young people, because that's part of it is our fault, and that how we wait till young people have been disenfranchised from voting for years, and then we try to pull them in, and they haven't been connected. We got to start early on in life. We got to start in the home where we were, and when they're in grade school and high school, to start engaging them in the process to see how important it is, and how their voice and their vote turns elections, and then we have to make elections relevant. In other words, we got to make it relevant to the young people where they are. Explain how this election, this position affects your life, and make it real to them. You can't do like we traditionally did and say, well, Dr. King and them marched for our right to vote. People bled and died for our right to vote. They're disconnected from that whole
Right,
history.
right.
What we have to do is get them right where they live. This is what's going to affect you in this election. See these judges that are running for Supreme Court, and then related to their experience and how it affects them in their everyday life. Otherwise, you telling them to vote, it's important that we vote, yeah, because people die, because for the right to vote, it means nothing to them. But we got to bring it home where they live.
Right.
So, and again, because this is a racistic nation, and I just call it what it is. It was founded on racism. It operates on revenue and racism. And for many people that are African American, when they move to, and that's one thing that drives me insane about the political process, is all they talk about is the middle class. No one talks about how does someone in the lower class come up to the middle class. All of these things are going on, and I try to get people to understand clearly not all white people are racist, blah, 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 blah. But you need to look at the policies. You need to read the policies.
Right.
One of the things that I am finding out, especially with our younger generation, they don't read news. They don't read newspapers. They don't read magazines. They don't read any of those things. They get their information from the same place the other party gets their information, and that's social media.
Right.
And so, and one pastor said something to me, and because I am who I am, you see that crazy stuff out there on Facebook that doesn't make sense. I said, but you're not out there. So since you're not out there, they don't have an alternative to at least look at. So what can we do? Because they live on this stuff. What can we do to engage them, to let them know, or to help? Because the truth of the matter is, this all began in 2008, if not before then. When Obama came into office, they were like, kind of like what I heard in Youngstown when Brown won. They had said there will never be another become mayor. So see, that mentality is there. And then what do we do? How do we reach them? Is there a consistent platform we can create that may draw them in? I'm gonna go to Pastor Ty. He is the electronic guru when it comes to that stuff. So I want to hear what he has to say.
Well, first I want to say that social media is the default communication mechanism for all people. There's and let's just be clear, there's just as many grandmas as there are grandkids on social media, by the way. And usually we're not even talking about the same social media, if you want to be honest. So now we're talking about all of us getting on Facebook. Ain't no young adults on Facebook. We should be doing an Instagram live. We should be doing TikToks. That's where young people are, and whatever new thing comes up next year. Facebook has been officially taken over by church folk and aunties and everybody going to Essence Fest. So that's what that is. Secondly, I'll be honest, we as Black clergy have to reestablish a real community presence that is not founded around, and no disrespect to any of us because we all do it, our special events, our VBSs, our once a year outdoor events. We need to be back out in the days of Pastor Simon Sr., back out walking and hoofing the street, take our little workouts to our neighborhoods. And I'm not bragging, but that is something I've intentionally done for 7 years here on the southwest side of Warren, is they see me walking and they miss me if they don't see me. We have forgotten that the neighborhood, including the children who will grow up around us, need to see us on a regular basis. And then they will hear us when we have something to tell them. We have centered people down to church services and special events and tragedies. And that 90% of Black pastors in all of our cities are not present in their own neighborhoods or in the neighborhoods where their churches are located. They are in and out of their cars, in and out of church, and you don't see them Monday through Friday. Hang out volunteer to be the crossing guard near the school. Send your members and your leadership out to the parks, sponsor teams, and then actually go down to the park where the teams are playing. Meet these parents. I had a shameful situation this past summer where we did rent a gym for 8 weeks, and I couldn't get another pastor to come down and meet 130 young Black boys that were a part of this basketball program. I got 2 or 3 to show up once each over the 8 weeks. What a wasted opportunity. So those things feed the political opinions and the agendas and the issues that we're bringing to their light, because honestly, we're just as foreign a voice as that politician that comes around once every 4 years. We're just as foreign. We're glorified funeral directors at this point. And that's where we are. So I'm begging our fellow clergy to find ways to be present at a basic grassroots, get a lawn chair and sit on the corner while the kids are playing football outside in the yard somewhere. Just be present. And when they know your name and see your name and you say something's important, more than their grandmothers will hear you. And that's just from my perspective. We have to build real relationship with our communities on a regular basis. I'm not trying to buy, don't try to buy these folk off with hot dogs and snow cones. Be present. Be present. Get out the car and go for a quick jog or a walk or just shake a few hands and basically politic at least once a week in a neighborhood or a housing project. Got to build relationships with our own communities again.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I still cut grass at the church. Okay. And I know I got members on here going, huh? Yeah, I still cut grass. And I was cutting the lot in the back, and it had been a while since I've been out there, and the neighbor across the street said, "Where you been? I haven't seen you in a while." He does not go to church. He has thought about coming, but he missed me. And that right there meant more to me than anything else. Matter of fact, when we were trying to get the lights changed in the upper lot, the gate was stuck because of an overgrown tree. He got out of his house, came over to help the technician to cut the tree down so they could open the gate. It's all like what you said, Pastor Todd. It's about the relationships. When the guys see me, and they're not all Black in the neighborhood, because I don't have a lot of neighborhood around my church. But when they see me, I wave, "Hey, how you?" And when they don't see me, they want to know, has something happened to him? Is he all right? Those were the things, like what you said about Pop Simon and the rest of them. They walked the streets. They knew everybody. Everybody knew them. And it's about relationships. Well, now I'm gonna let you jump in there, Pastor Simon, because we done talked about your dad a couple of times. So
Holy.
you have to unmute.
Nobody talks about it more than me. I am because of him. And it's true that building relationships with the people that we serve and the people that we're trying to reach in our community is essential. Because if they don't know you, I mean, you got to show that you care. People need to know that you care first before you bring to you your agenda, what you want them to do. They don't care how much you know. They just want to know how much you care. And being in the neighborhoods, particularly in the South Side, in the hood there, that before COVID, that our church did that consistently. Go canvassing the neighborhood, getting to know the neighbors, that database of addresses and phone numbers, and then whatever their needs were, we were there to address those needs, not to just talk about, are you saved? And you got to just care about their families. What do you need? You need a food, clothing, or you need help, you need assistance. What can you bring? What do you bring? How can we help you do what you're doing, rather than just trying to get them to be a part of what we are doing? And so building those relationships is is crucial. And what you hear, at least what I hear, is stories, and I don't even remember them. I don't remember what they're talking about, because they say, "Oh, Pastor Simon, I remember when you did this. I remember when you came to this from me. I remember when you came to stop by our house." I don't remember, but they remembered it, and it makes a difference to them. And particularly, even in hospitals, because sometimes we get pastors, are they a member, or not? When they're in need and you go visit them in the hospital, and they don't have to be a member of your church, just you show that you care about them in their time of need, they remember that. And you build relationships, and then you can talk to them about whatever it is that we're doing. But without those relationships, we don't have an audience.
And might I add, Dr.
Yes, sir.
Harrison, it's a two-way engagement, but I think that our groups, I don't think we need any more groups, but I think that we need to find ways to expose new generations to people like the Community Mobilization Committee, the Youngstown War and Black Caucus. One thing I noticed, and I made a comment after the last Black Caucus dinner, and I directed it towards young adults. I said more young adults need to invest in attending these types of banquets. They are amazing networking opportunities. You get around people, you get around your elders, you get around individuals who are really the power players, who are coming to seek our vote and support. And as much as we go spend money on this, that, and the other, and some of these restaurants are just as high as a $40, $50 banquet ticket, you can easily drop $100 of Red Lobster these days. So we need to invest as young adults in intentionally putting ourselves in those places for several reasons. And that's just one. The other reason I often say we just need to learn how to be classy and hang out in more professional and regal atmospheres. But the second thing is, from the group side, those of us who are a part of this, we need to find more ways to engage, maybe sponsor so many young adults at every banquet that we have. Find a way to sponsor 25 new voters, seniors who will be first-time voters that year. Find ways to do maybe a free spaghetti dinner at a community center and hold the meeting there in front of them. Let them see how we have, because it feels like we have these closed doors meetings and then have these open air, announcements. And not to say that we don't get feedback from the community. I know we do. I know you all, and I have too. But I think we need to open up our processes, because we're often viewed as just much of a back room as a political machine, to be honest. We're viewed as just another, it's unfair, but it's just the view that we're just another, you got the Democrat PAC over here, the super PAC over there, and the Youngstown Black Caucus having their meetings and they just show up with a slate. But I'm saying we have to be intentional, because our community is fractured in a lot of ways and not as united as it once was as a Black community. So we have to be intentional about reuniting people and saying, hey, we're going to bring 20 people to this next banquet, this next dinner. We're going to bring some of our meetings to where they are. We're going to use a community house in one of our housing projects as our meeting space for this month. We're going to do that instead of using the New Bethels or the Second Baptists of the world. We're going to have this meeting over here next door to Highland Homes in their room, or wherever, is appropriate in Youngstown. I think we have to do that. Open the door and start by putting money forth. I'll tell you a quick story. I was invited on a trip to Israel by an evangelical group, and they sponsored the whole trip. And the whole point was, they didn't really want me to see Israel. They want me to hear their viewpoint. And they were hoping I'd become a diehard John Hagee, Israel-loving, Black person. To be blunt, I took that free trip and kept my ear pods in, but I knew their intention. The intention was, let's try to expose as many Black people, ministers, up-and-coming Black ministers that would never associate with us. We sponsor them and spend 9 days feeding them our agenda and our views on Israel-American relations, all that kind of stuff. We certainly don't have to spend that kind of money, but we should start spending money to engage young people, young adults, first-time voters. We should have a minimum of 20 first-time voters, even if we work with local schools or advocacy groups at any of our events that we have, and they should be paid for by our churches, by our organizations, by some type of mechanism.
What we used to do, this was a few years ago when we were really attached to the National Baptist Convention, we would sponsor all of our young people, which was at least 50. And they didn't have to pay for a thing. We took care of them. We flew them, then we had buses waiting on us when we got there. And what I did, and it was one of the most challenging things I had ever experienced in my life, was I took them to a restaurant that was not McDonald's. Took them to a restaurant with linen and real forks and knives and things. And the first thing out of their mouth was, "Where's the hamburger?" Okay. And so I said to them, this is another side of the equation that I'm trying to expose you to. And the one thing that people have to understand is exposure, like what they were trying to do to you, Pastor Todd. Exposure leaves an indelible print upon them to know that there is somebody who is willing to invest in you to take you someplace that they feel you couldn't get on your own.
Right.
Okay. Even in the church, there's these new movements, and I'm not a hater of any of them. Okay. But what I have learned is new movements come and go, but the foundational, established things will be there when the new is gone. And so what we want to do is just make sure that they're exposed to that. When they go to the state convention, they don't pay at all. We take care of their rooms. I'm not talking about the state convention Union Baptist takes care of their rooms. They do what they need to do. I actually give them money out of my pocket to say, "Hey, Pat, okay, here you go." And those investments, because now those kids are all over the country. One thing that Bishop Walker said, and then I'm gonna let the two of you have a final remarks, and then we're gonna be done. Bishop Walker said, "Be careful how you treat college students, because they're not always going to be in college." Now, in case you missed that, if you invest in them while they're going through their educational process, they'll remember you when they become successful. Not so much to get money out of them, but to teach them how to reinvest in other people. And that's so important. Yeah, you're right, Juanita. It needs to be brought back. And because a lot of children, they'll never experience this unless we provide it for them so that they can have something to aspire for. And so with that being said, and we have 3 minutes left, because I start on time and I end on time. I started out with Pastor Todd. I'm going to start out with Pastor Simon. You can give us your closing thoughts and statements, and then I'll go to Pastor Todd, and then I'm going to click the button and we'll be gone.
Just to show my appreciation to you for having this forum. Yes, this is critical, and we've got to engage our young people in this election. We have to be very intentional in not just getting them for elections, but reaching them year round for whatever. We've got to groom another generation that's coming behind us. I mean, you and I, Pastor Harrison, Pastor Todd, are going to be around for a while.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But we're getting ready to hand the torch off, and we got to have somebody in the lanes to pass the torch to, pass the baton to. And so what we can do to engage our young people is critical. And it doesn't mean that we have to, give up our values but we do have to reach them right where they are. This election is important, and we need every vote, every voice to be heard. I'll turn the next minute over to Pastor.
And when Pastor Todd is done, the two of you stay on.
All right.
When I close it out, and then I need just 2 minutes of your time, and we'll go from there. Pastor Todd.
I've been hearing it said all my life in the church and now in community work that the message can remain the same, but the methods need to change. But the honest truth is, throughout most of my adult life, the methods have not changed in any substantial way. We have not practiced what we were preaching. And if we are going to engage a new generation in a sincere and impactful way, we have to be prepared for it to not look like, sound like, or act like what we have come to know. I'm a bit of a unicorn, and a few young pastors like me, we kind of slid into this with this great respect, and we kind of love the way we want to be just like you guys. Most people don't. Most of our peers and those coming up under us, they don't. So we have to really search ourselves genuinely and ask ourselves, what are we willing to sacrifice in comforts and in us being the unfamiliar, because we're often dragging them into the unfamiliar spaces to come and be a part of processes they're not familiar with. What are we willing? I said it to my church all the time. We ask folks to leave the world, leave their patterns, leave this, leave that, and you won't shift one seat over to make room for them because you're so used to your space. And we are the same way in our community and our political work. Are we really prepared for a different dressing, different talking, different acting, different approaching type of generation? Because honestly, if we're not, then we're not going to see the engagement. There is so much at stake, and I think our generation is going to be judged by what we left behind and who we brought up to sit in these spaces, whether or not they do it exactly like we do or not. And so I would encourage all of us to take what's been said tonight to heart. Thank you so much, Dr. Harrison, for opening up this portal and this platform. And I challenge all of us, including myself, to think differently, provide more spaces, share more seats, pass more mics, even when it feels a little raw and a little rough and a little unhinged even. We've all been there and still are there. I'm still a little crazy. And I think that we need to give them their space to try their hand as well. It's like my Steelers fans say, go ahead and put the rookie in and see what he can do. We're already losing. What can it hurt to give poor Pickett a few shots? So if we're already at risk and we know we're at risk, sometimes we got to start throwing some Hail Marys and be willing to see who might pick the ball up. Thank you so much.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for being a part of this moment. I am indebted to both of you because both of you are busy. Got a million things on your plate. Matter of fact, you don't even have plates anymore. Y'all got platters.
Right.
And for you to take this hour out of your schedule, I pray for those of you who are on. You've been engaged. You've been enlightened. You've also been challenged. And Ayana, please remind me to make sure that I get over there to your building. Or Kim is on here. So Kim, if you can get the core team engaged in that, that would be even better. So they're thanking you. I appreciate and love both of you for what you do. I'm going to end it, and then we're going to have a conversation for just a couple of minutes after this is over with. Thank you for being the leaders you are in the community. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move forward, and y'all be blessed. Take care of yourself. And as Lester Holt says, and look out for one another. That is overwhelmingly important. I'll be hollering at y'all later.